Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here today for the artist info session for the pilot Parks Residency. We're so excited to bring this opportunity to the arts community, and we're really looking forward to sharing more about it today. So thank you for being here. This is a slide that shows the agenda for today. So we'll talk about that opportunity of the residencies. There are multiple. We'll talk about the expectations and the role of the parks and park systems, the expectations and role of the artists, what a pilot program means and how we are approaching that, a little bit about the timeline, and then we'll walk you through the application. We'll actually pull it up and look at the application. And then lastly, we'll leave about half of our time, around the half hour, to talk through any questions that you have. And when we get to that section, we'll have you use the Q&A function, which is at the bottom of your screen. It's two little like chat icons. It says Q&A. It's right in the middle of your screen. And you could fill that out at any point in our conversation today. You can just write a question in there, and we'll use that instead of the chat. So thank you for using the Q&A function. Next slide, I'm going to tell you a little bit about our team at Forecast. Some of us are here on the call today. Forecast is a nonprofit arts organization that was founded in 1978, founded by and for artists, specifically working in public space. Forecast is based in St. Paul, Minnesota, and works locally as well as nationally, bringing artists to connect with cities, institutions, and communities, focusing on tackling the vital issues of our time. And specifically, Forecast's role in this project is going to be to manage and support the artists who are in residence, both individually and then also as a community or cohort. On the next slide, what is this opportunity? It's really the first of its kind to be an artist who's going to be embedded in a park or park system. And so you see here, these are our three partners in this project, the Greater Minnesota Regional Parks and Trails. And there are three opportunities through that organization, then the Metropolitan Regional Park System, three opportunities there. The Minnesota Department of Natural Resources System, there are three opportunities there. In the next slide, what is the goal of this residency opportunity? So we're really focusing on a sense of welcoming and belonging for park users. And the goal of this is to enhance that feeling of welcoming and belonging in the parks and the park systems. A little bit about the basics of the opportunity. It is a year-long opportunity. It starts in August of 2024, and then it ends in August of 2025. The expectation is that the artist will spend roughly 20 hours a week on this residency. That can look a lot of different ways. It does not mean that an artist has to be on site for 20 hours a week, but that they are engaged in the activities of the residency, however that pans out for them, for 20 hours a week on average. There's a $40,000 stipend that goes to the artist, and then there is a $14,000 materials budget for whatever the artist produces or gets into. So a little more about the opportunity on the next slide. So within this residency, we are asking that the artist will engage with the park and its community, and then use that kind of research to develop new works. And when we talk about new works, we are really talking about every discipline of creative. We really want to invite any kind of artist to apply for this. So, definitely not just visual artists. We're interested in poets, we're interested in dancers, we're interested in folks working with film or new media. So any discipline, you are welcome to apply. We encourage that. Also, part of this opportunity is that the artist's creative process itself, is sort of an artistic research process, and that can look a lot of different ways. One artist might spend their time talking to people. Others might spend their time getting their hands dirty in the dirt, taking dirt samples, taking water samples. So really that process of the creative creative process, creative research is really in the hands of the artist. And then what the artist then creates from that time of researching and discovery, again, can also vary widely. It could look like anything from actually making physical things to more time-based work like performances, or some hands-on workshops that the community can be involved in. And those are just three examples. There are other ways that the artist can kind of create artworks from this opportunity. On the next slide, we have three values that are grounding the residency: curiosity, belonging, and discovery. Curiosity meaning a curiosity around this opportunity. It's a pilot, right? So curiosity around kind of the newness of this, but also around the sites themselves and the systems of the parks. Belonging. So it's important to us that our applicants have an interest in exploring the physical and abstract concepts of place and belonging within this project. And then discovery, a desire to investigate group and individual processes, materials, and et cetera, as a path to discover new ways of knowing. So that's, I think, another tenet of this first time pilot, lots of discovery along the way. I'm going to give you two examples on the next slide of two artists in residence programs that are just a way for us to kind of get a little bit more texture around what it can look like with when an artist is embedded in a site or a system. So this is an example from the Department of Sanitation in New York. And this artist's name is Stowe Len, who actually went to did his MFA in the Twin Cities, so within the state. So has a little history there. But Stowe was embedded from 2021 to 2023, so for about 2 years in the Department of Sanitation as an artist in residence. And Stowe did a lot of research and archival exploration in his residency. So he was really thinking about, how can my curiosity as an artist uncover information about the history of how this department operates and the kind of collections that they've gathered over time, and how can I kind of remix and reimagine and tell that story anew. So one of the things that he discovered is these old posters that are kind of PSAs around not littering, conserving water, those kinds of things that a Department of Sanitation would do. And since he has a printmaking background, he decided to use this old signage that he found in posters and kind of remix them for the contemporary times. So bringing in this curiosity that he had about that collection, and then an interest in helping kind of connect that history to behavior change in the present. And then in the next slide, this is some more of his work where he found tapes and videos of material that the department had created in the past and remixed it for the present. On the next slide, this is a second example from the city of Oakland, California. The Oakland Department of Transportation had an artist in residence named Walter Wallace, just finished his residency. And with the Department of Transportation, the directive of this relationship was to improve how the department communicates with and engages with residents, with a focus on equitable engagement. So what did the artist do with that directive? He focused on the 311 system, which is where this department does a lot of engagement with the community, kind of that interface. And then also, we'll just focus on that one. And so what happened there is that he brought in community leaders, so on the right-hand side, to train in creating mini documentaries and a podcast. So help to kind of give workshops to teach folks about how to utilize that technology and do some story collection, storytelling. And they created 11 mini documentaries and a podcast that helped the department better understand how their current Department of Transportation services are experienced by their residents. Are there gaps in how they're being served? what's working well, what's not working. But they did all of that through collecting stories through documentary and podcast. So this artist is an example of someone who works with film, with audio, with radio, who had a really successful residency. So again, doesn't just have to be visual artists, very much open to folks who work in all mediums. Next slide. So I'd mentioned we'll talk about the expectation and roles of the parks and then the artists. So here with the parks are serving as a host site and a connector for the artist. They're going to help to provide clear information around the sites and spaces. There will be an onboarding and orientation process for the artists, and the park will be a part of that. There will be a primary contact through the parks for the artist. So kind of one person that you're continuing to work with there. You'll keep dialoguing with the park about ideas that you have. And then they'll also support communications around projects and events if you want to host a workshop, that kind of thing, or you have an art opening. Next slide, the role of the artist. So what's going to be your expectation and role? I think, is that you, Juana?
That's me, Mallory. Thank you.
Baton is passed.
Hi, everyone. I'm Juana Sullivan Jansen from Forecast Public Art. I'll be providing orientation for the artists that are chosen for the cohort. I'll serve as your mentor and provide support in your growth around the community and belonging part of the work. And I'll also be serving as a member of the team that will be selecting the artists for the process. So I'm happy to share information around expectations and the application process with you. So the role and expectations for artists, well, number one is that you will engage with the park during the majority of the 12-month residency. And as Mallory has indicated, engagement and availability of park staff will differ depending on the site, and you'll be able to negotiate directly with your site, whether these are in-person hours, whether these are participating in sessions by Zoom, how you'll work out the estimated 20 hours a week that you'll be participating with the sites. You'll produce a work plan and artistic outputs while you're in the residency. So again, as Mallory indicated, this isn't a traditional residency where you go and sleep for a month and paint or draw or write or dance and then leave a video of that performance and come back. This is very different from that. And so the artwork that you produce over the course of the year will take place in a variety of formats. You'll be encouraged and supported to create 3, 6, and 9-month work plans because we recognize over time and experience and research, your ideas may change, but this is to help you to stay on track over the course of the year, and also so that the parks and your mentor can support you in finding the right contacts to make your work plan become a reality. You'll also are required to participate in the cohort activities, which will include an onboarding process, virtual check-ins, a final evaluation, and feedback sessions. Because this is a pilot, we actually have an evaluator that will take time at different phases of the project to talk to us about how things are going. And in the end, we'll be producing a final evaluation of all the work, and you are expected to participate in that so that we can improve the cohort experience and document that for future artists who might be involved in the parks as well. And then, and this is particularly important, you'll be expected to provide your own transportation to and from sites. So think about that when you are choosing the sites that you're interested in being involved with. Now, as I indicated, this is a pilot program. So I want to talk about what that means within the context of this. What it means is that for this process, there are going to be 9 sites that are being selected, and there will be 9 artists that are going to be selected. We hope that the artist, the parks, and the staff who are all involved in this will be learning together, because people will come in with different levels of comfort and experience in this work. There's a kind of way that will bring you all together so that everyone gets to share in that, and you'll be able to provide feedback along the whole way. In general, a pilot means that there will be growth challenges, there will be opportunities to be curious and invite others into the conversation. And in the end, I think it's where the most innovation takes place, where we figure out how to adjust things, transform relationships, be sure that we include certain things as part of the process, etc. Next slide. So what's the timeline for this? Well, you've come to the right place. July 21st, this application on Submittable is going to close. And in mid-August of this year, the artist will be notified, including a date and time for onboarding sessions, and the residency will formally begin. The residency itself will take place over the course of 12 months. And in August of 2025, the residency will formally conclude. So I'm going to walk you through the application. And before we do that, I just want to emphasize a couple of things. One, you will need to create a submittable account to actually apply. Give yourself lots of time to work on this application and the materials, because there is no formal interview process that will take place in this. You are evaluated solely on your application materials that you submit to us, which then raises the next point. Be sure that you choose images and work samples that fit with the narratives that you will include. And please, please, please double check everything. Now, here is a word of encouragement for you. If you're struggling with a particular part of the application materials, I have blocked off my calendar and have about 10 15-minute sessions that are available to talk to me. And those are available between July 8th and 19th. I would encourage you to first take a look at the application and then reach out to me if you'd like to schedule a time slot. I will not start taking those time slots until July 5th. So keep that in mind. And there are 89 potential applicants on this call. So what I want to indicate is this is going to be very popular. What I can and cannot do for you, I cannot read your essay or choose your work samples for you. What I can do is answer or clarify the questions of the application. I can help you if you need assistance with the right format to submit materials in, uploading work samples, etc. And while I may not be able to answer specific questions about a park or trail, I can certainly find someone who would be able to do that for you. Okay? Okay. On with the application. So you may have found this on mnartist.org or gotten it forwarded to you in some kind of a way, or you may have found it on Forecast Public Art's main website. Whatever method you found it in, it's going to take you to a submittable link that looks something like this. And it's essentially like a page, a landing page, which will show you all of the calls that Forecast has open at the time. So then you'll need to click on this in order to see the application materials. And we'll scroll down. This is repeating the things that you'll see in the call. There'll be links to the different organizations that are involved, which is an amazing variety. And then you'll get repeats of the content that's in the slides today that talks about the guiding principles, what the artist qualifications are, etc. And so we're going to scroll down to application requirements. And you're going to need to write an artist statement and that can be up to 200 words. You'll need to include an artist bio that can be up to 100 words, and you're going to need to submit 3 work samples if you are an individual artist, and 5 work samples if you are applying as a group or team. You'll need to upload the images, text, or audio files, and please only link URLs to video samples. Please don't submit as your work sample a link to your website, because we cannot look at that. It needs to be uploaded. And at least one of your work samples should clearly demonstrate your work in community or in public space. And then you'll also need to attach to that a work sample list, which indicates the titles of each of the works that you've submitted, the dates that they were created, and a description that lets us understand the context in which the sample was created. Now comes the fun part, the essay questions, and why you can't wait until the last minute. The questions that you're going to need to respond to are the following. How have you historically involved communities in your practice? What is your relationship to land, Minnesota, and parks? What in particular appeals to you about this opportunity? And how do you like to collaborate? Once you have answered all of those things, you'll also be required to indicate your top 3 park sites. And please keep in mind when you're ranking that you need to be able to access those sites from wherever you live in Minnesota year round for the project. And then you'll be requested to write 1 to 3 sentences about why each of your top 3 sites are of interest to you. Someone asked me in an email if this part was important. And because there's no formal interview process, we'll read the essay questions, in particular, searching for responses that connect with what the parks are looking for a particular site. And then we'll be checking to see which ones you have ranked as ones that you're interested in based on where you live, et cetera. And we'll be doing a formal matching process. At the conclusion of that matching process, we will send off to the parks the candidate that we suggest, as well as the second and third choice in case the person declines that opportunity. And the parks will choose 1, 2, 3, and then we will be extending offers to folks in that order. So that is, in general, what you can expect from the application process. The FAQs that have come across are attached here, and any questions that we get today will add to this FAQ. Can I have a partner? When will the cohort meetings take place? Will transportation be provided? Can I stay overnight at parks? Will all be answered in detail in the materials along with what folks share today. So that concludes the presentation part of this process. And so now we're going to take a look at what's coming through in the Q&A and answer those questions for you as well. Hi, Mallory.
Hi, we're getting great questions coming in, and there are some, I think we could, since we've just gone through the nitty-gritty of the application, maybe we could dig into some of those questions that folks have. I'm going to field those to you, Juana. So one question is, are the 9 park sites already selected? And the answer is yes, they are. Would it be helpful for us? So they will be listed in the application. And then you are going to be asked, as Juana shared, to share your preferences. So what you're seeing, yep, so those are our host sites. There's information about them. There are links as well if you want to check out their websites. And then when you actually dig into the live application on Submittable, when you select your preferences, it will list each of the parks, and you will you will give information about your preferences there. So they are already selected. The next question, can we pick a park that is not on the list? You may not. This is an opportunity that was created in partnership with these parks specifically. So these are the parks that have the infrastructure set up and are really enthusiastic and excited to have artists work at them. All right, the next question is, can we find out in advance what kind of space will be available for the artist to use in the different parks? For example, will there be a studio space? Is there indoor, outdoor space? Juana, you can feel free to jump in on any of these. So we have some of that information is in this section that lists the parks. That was what Juana was just scrolling through, or maybe Jen was just scrolling through. It's not an exhaustive list. It gives you some information. I think that's about the best that I can answer. Juana, do you have anything else?
So keep in mind that because this is not a traditional generative residency program, the parks are unlikely to have studio spaces that would be designated solely for your use. They may have studio spaces that are used for teaching classes and other types of materials. They may not have a dance floor, for example. So you'll really need to be able to improvise what might be portable materials, what you might be able to bring in. We have links to all of the sites. And so if you have questions about the facilities that they have in general, you'll be able to get answers to most of those questions just by going into the websites for those particular places. Or you can reach out to me with a specific question, like, does X, Y, and Z site have X, Y, and Z thing? And I can help you get answers to that question.
Are there specific issues that parks are seeking to improve or resolve with the artist's assistance? I will say that that is not like a premise of this opportunity. This is really about creating a welcoming and belonging environment. So again, belonging is really the key word here. That being said, I think there are parks that have particular priorities that year or challenges they're dealing with, and those will definitely come up in the residency experience, but really the focus is belonging for all of these parks. All right, so
I was just going to say, there's a question that's been raised in the chat about the artist statement and the artist bio. It says, this feels like a silly question. There are no silly questions, but I'm sort of conflating artist statement and artist bio. Would it be safe to say one is generally who you are and one is more your type of the type or artist that you are? So what I would say is think of the bio as name, rank, and serial number, sort of like what your disciplines are. People often would put where they studied, what they're curious about, et cetera, et cetera. Whereas the artist statement might say, I have spent my entire career studying trees. I find them utterly fascinating. My lifelong passion is to get more people to appreciate and explore trees. I use a variety of mediums to accomplish that. Recently, I have been hosting conversations in recreation centers with young children around trees, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So the bio is a more formal thing about who you are as a human being and an artist. And the artist statement is more about how you make work and what's important to you as an artist. Here is a really good, tricky question. How are applications scored or reviewed? Is there a review panel? If so, who is on the review panel? Haha, that would be telling. Are there rural artists, greater Minnesota artists included on the review panel? So let me say this, keep in mind that there are site-specific selection processes, and then there are general selection processes. So when we first begin to review all of the applications, we'll be screening to make sure that you meet the minimum standards, that you've indicated that you have the 2 years of experience, that you are a Minnesota resident at the time that you apply and plan to be a Minnesota resident through August of 2025. And then once you make it through that screening, you'll go into a pile based on the 3 sites that you've chosen. Then the team, who will come from all over the state, will be looking at matching people with the sites that they've selected, including what the sites have said to us that they are looking for. And then, as I mentioned, in the end, we will narrow it down to 27 artists with 9 people being selected as the primary, 9 being selected as a secondary, and 9 being selected as the third candidate. And so those 3 application sets will go off to the site with the rankings that were made by the review panel for them to review. We won't at this time be sharing who the people are that are participating in the review process, but rest assured that it is a team of people who have experience in a variety of landscapes. And keep in mind that it is the site itself that ultimately makes the final choice. Should we answer the question about is there an expected output of work as concerned with frequency and or quantity? And so the short answer to that is yes. And the long answer to that is no. Or should I switch those around? So it's going to depend on your practice, what types of thing you're going to be creating. But at the minimum, all of the artists that are selected are going to need to create those 3, 6, and 9 month plans and produce some kind of output. And that's going to be very different depending on which site you're at, which communities you're deciding to work with, and the approaches that you decide that you want to engage. At the very minimum, you're going to be required to do some engagement. You're going to be required to produce the 3, 6, and 9 month plans. And there's the expectation that you will do all of the other things that were indicated in that process, and the notes about what the expectations of the artist are.
There was a question, I'm losing the question, but this is sort of a bundle of multiple questions. So there's some folks are wondering like if they can submit their vision of what they would do over the year, like what their sort of intention is and what their proposed ideas are. I would say the reason that you don't see that on the application is really intentional because we want this to be a process of discovery. So this is really different from like a traditional public art project. That's really not what the opportunity is. It's a residency where we're hoping that there's a process of co-discovery, getting to know the site, getting to know the system, getting to know the land, getting to know the users, getting to know the staff, getting to know the animals, all the things, and then letting that process of discovery then inform what might belonging look like now in this park, in this site, in this system, based on what I'm taking in during this residency. So that we don't have questions or an opportunity for you to say, hey, here's my work plan, here's what I would do. But as Hawana shared earlier, we are going to ask you once you're a resident artist to share how are you starting to think about that vision once you're inside of the residency. But really think of this more as a co-discovery process in which we're actually hoping you don't come in with like, I want to do this particular project, but that you let the collaboration reveal what project makes sense for the task of enhancing belonging. All right, getting so many questions in here. Thank you all for sending these in.
There's a question that I think is a really important one to answer. It says, I'm interested in applying to support some younger creatives to share one park. I know one of the requirements was looking for a certain level of experience. Are the young people able to rely on my experience and expertise to carry their application forward? So what I would say about that is, in a case like that, that may be something that you're interested in doing, but the primary artist in this case would be you. So either you or a group that you put together are applying as the primary artist, and you may want to say that you are particularly interested in working with young people in the parks, for example. But if the young people that you're referencing are not experienced and trained artists who are applying as a member of a cohort, their application wouldn't be considered to meet the minimum qualifications. So the way that you would want to submit would be to submit the professional applicant in that way. Here's one. Someone has been looking at the submittable and is asking for clarification around what the asterisks mean. So when we select our top 3 preferences for parks, can you explain the note about asterisks? For example, if I were to choose host site as GMRPTC2, I would be able to work with all 4 parks listed under that host site? Or if I were to choose my top 3 parks, am I choosing 3 of those 4 under the host site heading? So would I choose Oxbow, Cascade Lake, and Quarry Hill for my top 3 choices? I'm just confused about host sites versus parks. Thank you. This is such an important question. So when you are looking at the application, you'll see that each one of the sites has something listed there. And so a host site, in some cases, is an individual park. And in other cases, a host site is a collection of parks or a park system or a park and trail system that's combined. And so in the cases where you see the asterisk, that is an entire collection of parks and is considered a single choice. So if you were to choose, you might, for example, say, I am choosing GMRPTC2 as number 1, GMRPC GMRPTC3 as my second choice, et cetera, et cetera. So that entire site, though it's multiple locations, would be one of the options that you would be choosing.
Right. And I think, can you actually pull that back up, Jen? I do think actually I appreciate this question because we need to edit this a bit, I think, in our layout to make this clear for you all. Can you scroll up just a little bit, Jen, so you can see? So yes, so like you see host site GMRPTC2, and you see these multiple sites listed underneath it. This is all one preference. So I would say I want to do host site GMRPTC2, which would mean if I get it, I'm working at Oxbow, Chester, Cascade, Quarry, all of them. Juana, yeah, okay. Just want to make sure. Yes, so there are folks saying like, can I just choose Oxbow? No, it is all of those within that listing. So we can do some formatting to make that clear. I think these questions are making it clear we need to do that.
Yeah. I'm looking at, do I see 36 questions in the Q&A? There's no way we're going to be able to answer all of those because we only have about 15 minutes left, but we will go through all of them and answer them and add the answers to those as a part of the Q&A on Submittable. Oh, would someone be recommended as a primary choice for one site and perhaps a secondary for someplace else? Or would you only be put forward for one thing, period? No idea. I think it depends on how many people might submit the sites as their preferences. So for example, if you ranked something first choice versus if you rank something third choice, you might then be moved forward for two sites. Someone also posed a question around that they live in a particular location, and so as such could only choose one site as a place that they would be interested in being involved in. And when you go into the selection process for making the choices, you'll actually notice that you can, after you have to make a first choice, but when you get to second and third choices, there is an option to indicate the same place for all three choices, for example, or Maverick, I think they can indicate I do not have a second choice. I do not have a third choice. And in that
That's
case, you would
correct.
only be considered for the sites that you have indicated.
Hmm. That is correct. There's a question about do you have to have public art experience for this opportunity? You do not. You don't have to have public art experience. We do have a question in there about your experience working in community. That doesn't necessarily mean, public art. You could be a teaching artist, right? Like there are many ways to have community experience. So don't feel like if you've never done public art that you're excluded. We are looking for artists of all disciplines, and we will ask you a question about working in community. There are, other essay questions. So as long as those essay questions feel like things that you can talk about, then I think you'd be welcome to apply.
Thanks, Belle. So we got a question from someone that I think it's important to answer on air, and it's a question about how we are thinking and how the parks are thinking about intellectual property that's being developed during the residency and who will own that. So for this project and all projects that Forecast are involved in, the VERA rules for artists always apply. So, but I also want to emphasize that we're imagining that most of the outcome that's coming out of this is not going to be a tangible thing. It may be processes, conversations, and then some physical things that may exist. Those physical things may be created in connection with the community. They may take home a thing. Like if you made a coloring book, for example, the rights to reprint that coloring book could be shared between you and the park. But if someone colors a picture from the coloring book, photographs it, and puts it on Instagram, it's free and available for public consumption, but they cannot produce it as a revenue generating thing. So that's sort of the basics around that rule. I hope that helps some, but I just want to clarify that we're not imagining people are producing a sculpture in isolation of community. The work is about being in community and producing um, the work that naturally flows out of those encounters.
People are asking about what expectations are around what is created. Like, is it a final product that's permanent? Can there be temporary works? And the answer is it can be anything. So we're not, I think it's unlikely that we're going to be able to create permanent works. You might create objects. The permanent works could be explored, but I think that it becomes a little bit more complicated to install permanent works. But that doesn't mean that you can't create things like sculptures or installations. Workshops, of course, are more time-based. Those are absolutely welcome. Performances, film screenings, that kind of thing. But there isn't an expectation to make something permanent. And that, yeah, so that's the answer to that. Let's see what else. Yeah, I think along the lines of that question, is there expectation of like an output frequency or quantity around artworks? Do I have to make something every quarter? Do I need to make something in the 3 month, 6 month, 9 month? In the current design, there isn't an expectation of an artist needing to create things at a certain rate or certain frequency. I think it would be a great thing to be in communication about with the cohort and also with the host site once you actually become a resident artist. But we are not expecting, that you're going to be creating something in a certain rhythm by any means. And I think it's also possible that within the cohort that all the artists will maybe have different approaches to that, which I think will be a really interesting part of the collective experience.
So thanks. So someone posed a question around the clarification around the budget. So does the applicant have to pay themselves $40,000 and then use up the $14,000 for supplies? Or can they fluctuate these two lines as needed? Don't fluctuate whatever you do. The $40,000 is your salary for the residency program and will be paid directly to you in installments. The $14,000 you should think of as a discretionary fund. So that means you'll have a $14,000 budget to accomplish the goals that you lay out in those 3, 6, and 9 month plans. Oftentimes, for example, you might want to have food at an event that you have, or you might be interested in subcontracting with a projectionist if you're doing a puppet show. So things like that would come out of that $14,000 thing. You want to buy paints and do a community workshop. You want to buy 10,000 packages of Post-it notes or put together kits for people when they're going to go into the park. And so what we would typically do with those kinds of expenses is we could purchase the materials directly for you and we would keep track of how things were going. You might, for some of the less expensive things, want to purchase things and get reimbursed, but that fund is specifically there so that you don't have to worry about paying directly out of pocket for those things. How are hours tracked for the residency? So that's going to be between you and your host site. You would have to figure that out together. Will we be taxed on the 14K? No, because we have that money and we would purchase the things for you or reimburse you for the expenses that you had for materials things. So it's the $40,000 that is your salary that you would be taxed on. Does the 14K go towards gas and travel? No. So you should expect that the gas and travel to and from the host site is to be covered by you, and that money is materials money for the work that you'll be doing.
I don't know if we answered this, but there's a question about a budget. Do we need to have a detailed budget in advance? No, it's you don't. The nature of the residency, right, is not that you're applying with a preconceived project. Um, I think we haven't really discussed like if you're how you're sharing where the 14K is going, or I think details around that will have to follow up once you're in the residency. But to the sub question in there, can you use it towards like research support or hiring, like Juana said, the projection person, because you have a puppet show? Absolutely. So really the materials cost is meant to help support your research process as well as your art making process. And you do not have to, at this point, come up with any kind of budget. There are some questions on here that I think we will have to circle back with you all on, and these are all awesome questions. We want to make sure we can just answer them accurately. So some of these are going to require a little bit more conversation on our end. But there are a few more here.
Someone asked about the timing of the residency, and they asked if they could begin the residency in September instead of August, if they need time to wrap up previous employment, or if it's a strict August 1st start date. So the first thing I want to clarify is it is not a strict August 1st start date. It is a mid-August start. And keep in mind that this is part-time and that you are negotiating with the site how you will show up. So for example, if you are transitioning out of a full-time job for 2 weeks and you can make it to all of the orientation activities that are being hosted and participate in meetings virtually and go to the site on the weekends, and that's what you agree to, then that's the decision that's made. We won't get involved in the day-to-day things, but you would need to be able to meet the expectations of the program by mid-August when the artists are selected and chosen. And everyone will have a contract that they'll sign that says they're going to do this, that, and the other. And so you'd need to be able to do that at that time. So we've only got about 3 minutes, well, 2 minutes left. And so I'm thinking, do you want to do one last question? Do you see anything in there, Mallory, that we should tackle now?
There's a question. There's some questions about how the pilot came to exist and also the future. A little bit more about the how it came to exist, I think, is something we'll follow up with you all about. But the nature of a pilot is to sort of test something new and offer us a lot of learning so that we might think about how to improve it for the future. So while there isn't necessarily, a direct plan for next steps. I think that's sort of part of what this opportunity is to learn and think about if this were ever to happen again, what might it look like?
Yeah.
Also, to clarify, you can apply as as a team, there were some questions that I already answered in here. So individual artists as well as groups of artists, duos, trios, that kind of thing. And there are instructions in the application that should cue you on any specifics related to applying as a group. But somebody also asked, can I apply as an art organization? We're really looking for artists specifically to be in residence. So for example, if you run an arts nonprofit and you want that nonprofit to be in residence, that's not what this is. So artists or individual artists. And then folks have, there's a theme around multiple questions around scheduling. And we know that folks have, you all have busy lives and you have commitments you may have already made. You may have other part-time work that you're balancing. You may be more available at certain times of the day or certain days of the week. So there are not expectations around that right now. I think all of those kinds of needs will be addressed once you're in residence, but I think no one's schedule should preclude them from participating in this. I actually think the way it's structured, you're really managing a lot of your own time. Those 20 hours a week, you're not like being asked to go to an office and like be there for 20 hours. The park is your office. The neighborhood, you might spend time in the neighborhood. You might spend time researching, even in a library or something. So there's a lot of flexibility around how you manage your time. So I think if you are somebody who feels like I have a complicated time thing going on in my life, don't count yourself out at all for this. Definitely apply. And I think we can work with all of the needs that people have around time, and we'll cross that bridge a little bit further in the process if you are selected.
Okay. I think we're out of time. So I just want to thank all the folks who've joined us for this. And just a reminder that the video of the Zoom and also a PDF of the slides from the talk today will be available in the submittable site so that you can watch them at your leisure. Please feel free to reach out to me at juana@forecastpublicart.org if you have questions or would like to schedule a time. Remember, I won't start scheduling the sessions until July 5th, and they will take place between July 8th and the 19th. Thank you.
Thank you all.